Imagine building the largest retail company on the planet, bigger than Walmart, bigger than Amazon would ever become in its early years, and then watching it disappear into bankruptcy while the entire world watched. Sears wasn't just a store. It was the original everything store, decades before anyone had ever heard of e-commerce. And the way it collapsed is one of the most painful lessons in business history. To understand how Sears fell apart, we have to go back over a century to a time when the company completely reinvented how America shopped. In the late 1800s, Sears built its empire on something revolutionary for its time: the mail-order catalog. Families living in remote, rural areas, far from any city stores, could flip through a massive catalog and order everything from clothing to furniture to entire prefabricated houses, all delivered straight to their door. For millions of Americans, Sears wasn't just a retailer. It was their only connection to the modern world. By the mid-20th century, Sears had transformed again, becoming the largest retailer in the United States, with department stores anchoring shopping malls in nearly every major city. At its absolute peak, Sears controlled roughly 1% of the entire United States' gross domestic product. To put that in perspective, that would be like one single company today controlling hundreds of billions of dollars of the American economy on its own. Sears wasn't just selling products. They were shaping how an entire nation lived, worked, and shopped. But by the 1980s and 90s, the retail landscape began shifting dramatically, and Sears failed to keep pace. Discount retailers like Walmart and Target began offering lower prices with more efficient supply chains, eating away at Sears' market share year after year. Meanwhile, Sears' leadership stayed comfortably attached to their traditional department store model, believing their brand loyalty alone would carry them through any competitive threat. Then came the internet. In the mid-1990s, e-commerce was still an unproven, experimental idea. Few executives believed people would ever trust buying products online instead of walking into a physical store. Sears, despite literally inventing the concept of remote shopping through their catalog business decades earlier, dismissed online retail as a passing trend, not a serious threat to their core business. This decision would prove catastrophic. While Amazon quietly built out massive distribution centers and refined online shopping into a seamless, trustworthy experience, Sears continued investing primarily in physical store expansion and traditional advertising. By the time Sears finally attempted to build a meaningful online presence, they were already a decade behind competitors who had spent years perfecting the exact business model Sears had dismissed. In 2005, Sears merged with Kmart in a deal orchestrated by hedge fund manager Eddie Lampert, creating Sears Holdings. Lampert promised the merger would create powerful synergies and modernize both struggling retailers. Instead, the merger became one of the most controversial and heavily criticized business decisions in modern retail history. Rather than reinvesting profits into stores, technology, or customer experience, Lampert focused heavily on cost-cutting and financial engineering. Store maintenance was slashed. Employee morale collapsed. Physical locations became increasingly outdated and understaffed, driving away the very customers Sears desperately needed to retain. Critics argue that Lampert treated Sears less like a retail business to grow and more like a financial asset to extract value from, selling off valuable real estate holdings and iconic brands like Craftsman tools, all while store conditions continued deteriorating rapidly. Store closures accelerated dramatically throughout the 2010s. Once operating over 3,500 stores across the country at its peak, Sears steadily shrank year after year, closing hundreds of locations annually as sales continued their relentless decline. By 2018, after years of mounting debt, plummeting sales, and failed restructuring attempts, Sears Holdings officially filed for bankruptcy, marking one of the largest and most symbolic retail collapses in American history. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Entire shopping malls that had depended on Sears as their anchor tenant for decades suddenly faced their own existential crisis, with many malls eventually closing entirely once their central Sears location shut its doors for good. Today, only a small handful of Sears stores remain open, a tiny fraction of what was once a retail empire that touched nearly every American household. The Sears story remains one of the most sobering lessons in modern business history. A company that once invented remote shopping, dominated the retail industry for generations, and controlled a staggering share of the American economy ultimately collapsed because leadership refused to evolve alongside the very customers and technologies that had once made them unstoppable. So here's a question for you. Do you think Sears could have survived if Eddie Lampert had invested in innovation instead of cost-cutting? Or was their decline simply inevitable given how the retail industry was changing? Let me know in the comments below.